Hello everyone, my name is Fatima and welcome back to the Race Edit, and if you're new here, welcome to the Race Edit and welcome to a new video. You guys, we have one more race left of this super long season, and the last race that we just had was kind of ridiculous in so many ways. As you know, we just had the Qatar Grand Prix, and I have some thoughts. I think we all have some thoughts. So I'm just gonna jump right into it. I'm gonna jump into my race recap, then I'm gonna talk about some hot topics, and then we're going to have a quick discussion about the final race of the season coming up this Sunday, Abu Dhabi. And yeah, there's a lot to discuss. So you know what? Let's just get right into it. I'm going to just talk about, I guess, the hot mess of the Qatar Grand Prix. You know what? I don't think I like the Qatar Grand Prix, which is interesting because there's just nothing about it that appeals to me, and I thought this year would be different. I thought I was going to enjoy it a bit more this year, and it's not that I hate the racetrack. I don't know. There's just, I love a night race. You guys know me. I love a night race. There's just something about Qatar that it's not my favorite, you know, and especially after this race, I'm like, maybe we could try something else, you know? But let's be honest, if it was not for the stewarding this race, I actually don't think this would have been as exciting of a race as it actually was. There was a point where there was quite a big lull in the race, and then everything just went to crap, essentially. So the race started off with a bang. We had Copan and Olakinto. We had Copan, wow. We had Ocon and Colapinto out lap one, pretty much turn one, lap one, essentially. They crashed out, DNF for them. And then we had a race restart. We had George Russell, who had pole position, drop down from P1 to P3 due to Max just being Max and taking back his pole position that he lost due to a one-place grid penalty, which is literally ridiculous. But hey, what can you do? Lando Norris then got the jump on George and almost got the jump on Max, but Max is Max, as we know. And George ended up P3, if I'm correct, up until he pit, yeah, because Oscar was trying to get him. So the race did start off quite alright. Then we had Lance Stroll, who was noted for a 10-second penalty for causing a collision, if I'm correct, but he was also told to retire his car, so he served his penalty, then retired the car, so he was also out of the race. Who else was out of the race? We had Alex Albon out of the race, which caused the catastrophe that we had because of his mirror. So Alex Albon's mirror flew off. There was no safety car called. It was a yellow flag that was called. And in this caused chaos because then Bottas, I think 4 laps later, ran over the mirror, which caused, of course, debris. Then we had Hamilton with the puncture. We also had Carlos Sainz with the puncture, and due to that, everyone ended up going into the pit. And then after that, it was pretty much race on. Honestly, like I said, this race was quite chaotic. So we have the constructors battle that is now going to be going to the final race due to Lando Norris getting an insane penalty, a 10-second stop and go penalty. Like, that's kind of crazy. So because of that then took Lando Norris out of the points when he was in contention to be on the podium. So because of that, it took him out of the points, and then he had to rebuild, and I think he only finished P10. Yeah, he took the final points, and then he also got fastest lap. So some crucial points for McLaren. Like, we know McLaren is going to win the constructors unless something crazy happens during Abu Dhabi where Ferrari just gets a 1-2 and both McLaren cars are just DNF'd. There's no other way for McLaren to not, I mean, obviously there's other ways, but there's pretty much no other way for McLaren to not win the constructors title unless they insanely fumble it. Had Carlos Sainz finished higher, I think it would have been a bit more of a battle, but we're going into this race like how we went into Las Vegas when we knew Max Verstappen was going to win the title, the WDC, you know what I mean? So unless something colossal happens to both McLarens, they should have the constructor's title in the bag. We had Zhou Guanyu in the points. If you know me, I have been waiting for Sauber, Bottas or Zhou to get in the points. I was like, it came to a point where it's like, I don't care who it is, I just need, because I like both of those drivers, and like to see them put in the work and not get points because the car is just not so good was quite painful. I was really hoping Bottas would also get in the points as well too, because he has raced his little butt off this season and it hurts that he was so close. And of course, Lando Norris, sorry, rip that away from him. No shade to Lando, but come on, dude. Yeah, I know. He needs points are crucial. Points are crucial, but I'm so happy for Zhou. What a great way for him to end off his time in Formula One. But you know what? People are like, it's such a beautiful story, you know. There is a massive spider in my room. Oh my gosh. They were like, what a beautiful story. It's his final few races in Formula One and he ends off his time in Formula One with points. I'm like, no, this is not a heartwarming story. Like, I'm so happy for Zhou, and I know Zhou is so happy that he was able to do this for the team. But no, it's not a heartwarming story. I'm sure Zhou would rather stay in Formula One, but I am happy for him nonetheless. And at least he can say that he ended off his time racing in Formula One with getting points for his team, especially for a team that has not accumulated any points at all during the season whatsoever. You know, I can't talk about this race without talking about my favorite driver. What even in the world was Lewis Hamilton's race on Sunday? It was what? So he had a false start. He dropped 4 positions. His car was not doing what it needed to do. He had a puncture. He had a drive-through penalty. Then he wanted to retire the car. Then Mercedes told him not to retire the car. Then Mercedes told him to retire their car, and then he didn't retire their car, and then he just started making up places with like 3 laps to go, and everyone was just like, what in the world is going on in that team? I'm so serious. That was the most unserious race. I think that actually qualifies as Lewis Hamilton's most unserious race. Because you gotta feel for the guy. I feel for the guy because I'm a fan of him, and it's just, I have nothing else to say, but like, I know that man cannot wait until the final lap in Abu Dhabi when he can sign off and just go home. My gosh, what a season it has been. I actually literally have nothing more to say about Mercedes AMG Petronas F1 team as a organization. You have to laugh. You have to laugh, right? For the race recap, I have nothing to say about Mercedes AMG Petronas F1 team, but for my hot topics, that's coming up next, I have some things to say. Then we had a Max win. The thing is, Max had a good race, but because of everything that was happening during this race, he was quite overshadowed by it. But oh well, we had a Max win, and we move. Apparently Red Bull, I don't know what's going on with Red Bull. Does Red Bull know what's going on with Red Bull? I don't think so. But that was pretty much the race in a nutshell, in a very condensed, choppy nutshell, because I spoke about the parts that really piqued my interest during this race. I just want to get right into my hot topics because I got some things I would like to talk about. Starting off with none other than Max v. George. Now, for those of you who don't know, but I'm pretty sure we all know, Max Verstappen got a 1-place grid penalty after getting pole position, which was then transferred to George Russell because he was P2. Max says that he has never seen a driver fight pretty much so hard to nag someone down, essentially, and he lost all respect for George because he's one way in front of the cameras and he's a completely different way in front when he's speaking with the others in person. And long story short, Max said George is fake and he would respect him more if he was real. Long story short, I'm not going to say I don't agree with Max because I don't know George personally. I've never met him personally, but it does come off that way in certain instances where you see anger come out of George and then he goes yabba dabba doo, and then you're like, the math is not mathing. And we saw it a lot last year when he was struggling during some of the races where you would see like cracks in Mr. Perfect, and he's had a good run of PR this season, I will not lie, but again, there's cracks, like when he was yelling about them going into the hards. And I'm just saying, Max and George, I know George likes to think that if he were to get in a title fight, he would beat Max, but I don't think so. I think Max, you know what, and maybe this is I feel like there's only a handful of drivers that Max actually takes serious as opponents when it comes to beating them in a title fight. And I think that a handful of drivers is Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, and that's pretty much it. I feel like if Alonso was up for the fight, Max would respect it too. But right now, I don't think there's anyone else that he actually takes seriously. And unfortunately for George, I don't think he takes him seriously when it comes to a title fight. I do think Max would mollywop him. I'm not going to lie. I think George can race, and I think George has great defensive skills. I do think though that he does get certain head loss when things don't go his way, and i.e. Singapore last year when he crashed during the final race lap. Like, I think there's instances where he does get head loss, and that is his kryptonite. I believe that he has a lot of short-sightedness and not a lot of thinking of the future, which is what his problem is. And in a title fight, you can't have that. And I do think Max is crazy, and they would just take each other out each race. So it would be an interesting title fight. I would actually like to see a George Max title fight maybe like 4 years in the future, because I have an agenda for 2025 and 2026. But I just thought it was quite interesting seeing that, and allegedly we're going to see some of that fight on Drive to Survive. I do think Drive to Survive is going to be really good this season. I really, really do, and I will be seated. I will be watching it. I'm so excited for Drive to Survive. Alrighty, what's next? Alpine. Y'all know Esty Bestie is my guy. I am an Esty Bestie fan. I love Esteban Ocon. I think he is misunderstood. I don't know that man. I do think he is misunderstood, and Alpine is a curious one for me because, as we know, he will not be racing in Abu Dhabi, so he can do the preseason test with Haas, his new team, while Jack Doohan races for Abu Dhabi. So that is the story that Alpine has given us. My question to Alpine is, why not just let him finish his season off strong? I'm sorry, Esteban Ocon is Alpine's most successful driver. He's won a race with them. He has, 2-3 podiums with Alpine. And I guess there's just love lost. And I feel like Alpine is acting real brand new because you guys were bottom barrel. I'm sorry, you guys were down with Sauber at the start of the season up until now. There's rumors circulating that they want Jack Doohan to race now to see where he compares to maybe sign someone else. I don't know if I believe that. I just think the love has been lost, the relationship with the team has been severed, and they don't want him racing in Abu Dhabi, and it kind of sucks. I understand the business of the sport. I understand it's a ruthless, cutthroat sport, don't get me wrong, but when you're forward facing with the public, it leaves a bad, sour taste. But again, business is business, but I'm just like, that's suspicious because Ferrari is letting Carlos go do the test with Williams. We know why Hamilton's not doing the testing with Ferrari, and that is just because of the nature of Hamilton's contract. He's still racing in Abu Dhabi for all we know, but Hamilton makes sense. Alpine just feels petty. I just feel like Alpine always has the worst PR, and I'm like, don't you guys want better PR, especially with everything that's going on in your team right now? Like, every single time it's just terrible PR from Alpine. Maybe that's just what they like. I don't know. It's not very nice. And I just want to talk about Mohammed bin Sulayem one more time because apparently I talk about him a lot. He has a severe case of main character syndrome. Everything that transpired during this race all falls back on MBS. And it's just insane. I have a theory. He knows come next year, when it's time to vote for a new president of the FIA, he's not going to get that vote. So he is cleaning house in order to make sure that when he leaves with all the chaos that he ensued. That's my theory. It might not be right, but I'm just saying. Main character syndrome through and through. Like, what do you mean the drivers don't have a right to know where their money is going when you find them? It's their money. It's their money. And he loves to use the I was a racer. And I don't, him saying I was a racer as a scapegoat every single time just doesn't make sense to me because it's not about you. And I've said this before, it's actually not about you. MBS is about the greater good of the governing body that you are the president of. And I don't think he recognizes that, or if he does, he just fails to acknowledge it. And I don't understand what this power trip is. I don't understand who slighted him so bad for him to be such a bad president, I'm sorry, maybe there's something behind the scenes that I don't know about. Of course there is something behind the scenes I don't know about. I don't know what goes on there. I don't know the ins and outs. I just know what I see and everything that ensued during this race. And I thought it was really funny because after he made that statement about the GPDA, about the driver's statement out to the FIA, we had this terrible race with terrible race direction from the stewards, and I was just like, karma. Some people are like, maybe they're handing out all these insane penalties as a way to kind of slight the drivers for speaking out against the FIA. But I was like, in doing that, now there's more eyes on the FIA because this was terrible, bad business. Even in their excuse or even their statement as to why they made the decisions that they made didn't make sense because they're just completely inconsistent. The FIA is really good at being inconsistently inconsistent. Lewis Hamilton got that penalty for a false start, but a couple races ago, Lando Norris also had a false start and he didn't get a penalty. He got a fine. How does that make sense? How does that make sense? There's no rhyme or reason behind how they hand out penalties. And I think that's really starting to become a big issue now. It's starting to be, there's a lot of eyes on the FIA as a governing body as a whole, and I need to start watching more series that the FIA governs and compare how it works. Long story short, MBS has serious main character syndrome, and it's a problem. It's a problem. Now, we have Abu Dhabi coming up this week. I have so many mixed emotions about Abu Dhabi because it's Lewis Hamilton's final race with Mercedes, and as much as I'm so sick of hearing Toto Wolff speak, I understand the sentimental value of Hamilton racing in Mercedes gear for the final time. It is going to be, it's weird because I go from being I'm so sad, I'm so emotional about it to like he needs to go to Ferrari. I'm like, he needs to go because clearly whatever's going on with the team, like Alpine and Esteban Ocon, the love is lost, the trust is broken, the relationship is severed. No matter how much they try and show that it's not, it is severed. It's nice to see, every single time I see Lewis Hamilton and Susie Wolff together, I'm like, why can't we get Susie Wolff in the divorce? But it breaks my heart. It makes me sad because I feel like we could have had a better farewell on Mercedes's end, and maybe we will. I don't know if we will. We've seen so many glimpses of who Hamilton is as a racer this season, and we're just like, clearly he's got it. There's something else going on. And this is not even me speaking as a conspiracy theorist. This is just me speaking as a person who literally watches his onboards and sees sees the difference between his car and George's car. And you're just like, again, George should have the better setup because he will be the team lead come next year. Don't get me wrong. I don't understand all the yapping and the outside noise from the team, though, in trying to essentially gaslight everyone, not just Hamilton fans, but people who are watching the sport. Every time after a race, when the pundits will analyze, will speak about Hamilton, they're like, there's just something wrong with his car. We just don't know. But George's car, and you're like, everyone sees it, everyone knows it, but it's just like that weird elephant in the room. And I am going to have the biggest sigh of relief once he goes on to Ferrari. I do think it will be a challenge for him in Ferrari, but I think there will be a big, vast difference from his 2024 season to his 2025 season, and I'm just ready to be seated. We also have Sainz's final race with Ferrari. We have Bottas, Zhou, and Kevin Magnussen in their final races in Formula One, it seems to be, which is really sad, especially for Bottas and K-Mag because they've been in Formula One for so long. And one thing about me is I get attached to everyone. Even if I don't like the driver, it's the change aspect for me that I have to like learn to let go of. Because like if Max were to leave Formula One, I'd be like, good riddance. You have been yapping away about how you can't wait to retire, but it's the change aspect that gets me. I'd be like, oh man, now we're gonna have a whole new grid with this guy that's been here for so long, and I don't like change. Long story short, I don't like change. So I'm gonna have to get used to it because we have a whole bunch of new rookies coming in next year, and I'm gonna get attached to them, and then whenever they leave, it's gonna be the same cycle. But it's quite bittersweet, especially for Bottas and Kevin Magnussen to be leaving the sport that they've been doing for so long. Yeah, I have so many thoughts and feelings about this, but I think I'm gonna talk about all of that after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. After the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, I'm also going to do a video on my Unserious series my very first Unserious Series episode that I did way back at the start of this season to see how close I was with how I thought the season was going to play out. And honestly, if I'm remembering correctly, there's a couple that I got pretty right, and I'm so proud of myself for that because those are all unserious predictions, but they became serious. Anyway, that's all I have for you all today. If you guys like this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. I am on my way to 500 subscribers, so every single like and every single subscription means the world to me. And I will see you all after Abu Dhabi. Thank you all and have a wonderful, wonderful day.